Most people grow up believing that investing is something complicated. It's often presented as a world filled with fast moving numbers, complex strategies, and decisions that have to be made quickly and with confidence. From the outside, it looks like a game where only the smartest or most informed people succeed, and everyone else is simply guessing. Because of that perception, a lot of people either avoid investing entirely or they approach it with uncertainty. They look for shortcuts, they follow trends, and they try to make sense of what seems like a constantly changing system. They jump in and out, react to news, and often feel like they are one step behind. But when you take a step back and observe how wealthy individuals actually invest over long periods of time, a very different picture begins to emerge. The reality is far less dramatic, far less chaotic, and far more structured than most people expect. What becomes clear is that wealth in investing is rarely the result of a single great decision. It is not about catching the perfect opportunity at the perfect time. Instead, it is built through a series of consistent actions that are repeated over many years. This idea is important because it shifts the entire perspective on what investing really is. It moves it away from being a game of prediction and toward being a system of behavior. One of the first things wealthy investors tend to understand is that trying to outperform the market consistently is extremely difficult. There is a common belief that successful investing means finding undervalued stocks, predicting market movements, or identifying trends before they happen. While this can occasionally work in the short term, doing it reliably over decades is something even professional investors struggle with. Because of this, many wealthy individuals choose not to play that game at all. Instead of trying to beat the market, they choose to participate in it. This is often done through broad, diversified investments that represent entire markets rather than individual companies. By doing this, they remove a large portion of the uncertainty that comes with stock picking. They are no longer dependent on the success of a single business or a single idea. Instead, they are aligned with the overall growth of economies, industries, and innovation as a whole. Historically, markets have shown a tendency to grow over time. This growth is not steady, and it is certainly not predictable in the short term, but over longer periods it has been consistent. Economies expand, companies evolve, technology advances, and productivity increases. By investing broadly, wealthy investors position themselves to benefit from this long-term progression. Another key difference lies in how time is perceived. Most people approach investing with a short-term mindset. They look at daily or weekly changes, they react to news, and they often measure success based on immediate results. This creates a constant sense of urgency and uncertainty. Wealthy investors, on the other hand, tend to think in much longer time frames. Their focus is not on what will happen next week or next month, but on what is likely to happen over the next decade or more. This long-term perspective allows them to stay calm during periods of volatility and avoid making decisions based on temporary conditions. The concept of compounding plays a central role here. When investments generate returns and those returns are reinvested, they begin to generate their own returns. Over time, this creates a snowball effect where growth accelerates. However, this process requires time to become significant. In the early stages, the growth may seem slow or even insignificant, which is why many people lose patience and abandon their strategy too early. Wealthy investors understand that the real impact of compounding is not immediate. It is something that becomes powerful over extended periods. This understanding allows them to remain consistent even when progress feels slow. Consistency itself is another defining factor. Instead of trying to find the perfect moment to invest, wealthy individuals often invest regularly over time. This approach removes the need to predict market movements and reduces the emotional stress associated with timing decisions. By investing consistently, they are able to take advantage of both rising and falling markets. When prices are high, their investments continue to grow. When prices are low, they are able to acquire more at a lower cost. Over time, this creates a balanced and stable path forward. Costs are also taken into consideration in a way that many people overlook. Fees associated with investing can seem small on the surface, but over long periods they can significantly reduce overall returns. Wealthy investors tend to prioritize low-cost investment options and avoid unnecessary transactions that could erode their gains. Another major difference is how risk is managed. Risk in investing is often misunderstood. Many people associate risk with short-term price fluctuations, but wealthy investors tend to view risk as the possibility of permanent loss or failure to achieve long-term goals. By diversifying their investments and maintaining a long-term perspective, they reduce the likelihood of significant long-term losses. They accept short-term volatility as part of the process rather than something to be avoided at all costs. Emotional control is perhaps one of the most important elements in this entire process. Financial markets are influenced not only by economic factors but also by human behavior. Fear and greed can drive prices up and down in ways that are not always rational. During periods of market decline, it is common for investors to panic and sell their holdings in an attempt to avoid further losses. However, this often results in locking in those losses and missing the eventual recovery. Wealthy investors are aware of this tendency and take steps to avoid reacting impulsively. Instead of making decisions based on short-term emotions, they rely on predefined strategies and systems. These systems are designed to function regardless of market conditions, which helps remove the need for a constant decision-making. This approach reduces stress and increases the likelihood of staying consistent over time. It also allows investors to focus on long-term outcomes rather than short-term fluctuations. Another aspect that is often overlooked is the role of patience. In a world where instant results are expected in many areas of life, investing requires a different mindset. Progress is gradual and results are not always immediately visible. Wealthy investors accept this reality and align their expectations accordingly. They understand that building wealth is a process that unfolds over years, not days. This patience allows them to stay committed to their strategy even when there is little visible progress. It is also worth noting that wealthy investors do not rely on a single strategy or idea. They often combine multiple principles into a cohesive approach that balances growth, stability, and risk management. This creates a more resilient portfolio that can adapt to different market conditions. For someone starting out, this may seem overwhelming, but the underlying principles are straightforward. It is not necessary to understand every detail or predict every outcome. What matters is adopting a consistent approach that aligns with long-term goals. This might involve setting up regular contributions, choosing diversified investment options, and maintaining a long-term perspective. Over time, these actions can lead to significant results, even if the initial progress seems small. The key takeaway is that investing does not need to be complicated to be effective. In fact, simplicity is often what makes it sustainable. Complex strategies can be difficult to maintain and may lead to inconsistent behavior, which ultimately reduces their effectiveness. By focusing on simple, proven principles, wealthy investors create a system that is easier to follow and more likely to produce consistent results. As you look at this from a broader perspective, it becomes clear that the difference between successful and unsuccessful investors is not based on access to information or advanced knowledge. It is based on the ability to apply basic principles consistently over time. This realization is important because it makes investing more accessible. It removes the idea that success is reserved for a select few and replaces it with the understanding that it is achievable through disciplined behavior. Ultimately, the process of building wealth through investing is not about finding the perfect strategy or making the perfect decision. It is about creating a system that can be followed consistently, regardless of external conditions. It is about understanding that progress takes time, that setbacks are part of the journey, and that long-term growth is the result of repeated actions. When viewed in this way, investing becomes less about complexity and more about discipline, less about prediction and more about participation. And that shift in perspective can make all the difference. If you found this video helpful, consider subscribing. I post regularly. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I read everything.